let's get started. All right, so this session, I'm pretty excited about this actually because maybe I'll kick off with a couple of intros, and that'll sort of explain why I'm a little bit excited. So I'm Richard. I head up DevRev across Australia and New Zealand. And Shlomi, do you want to introduce yourself? And don't be shy, please. Hey, Naf, thanks for joining, mate.
Hello, hello. So I'm Shlomi. Been an engineer and architect for 20 plus years. I'm not going to go into the exact numbers. And I've actually been one of the first developers at DevRev. And in the last 2 years or so, I kind of switched my roles and became more customer facing. I guess DevRev crossed me over from dev to rev, and here I am. So
Yeah,
glad to talk to you about what we do and basically what does it take to build agents? What does it
yeah,
actually?
yeah. So the I guess the inception of this topic of this webinar was Shlomi ran a session with our team, and we sort of all riffed a little bit on how like it's so easy to impress people with AI and AI agents, and everybody goes, "Wow, look, you know, in a week, in a few days, we've got it doing amazing things." And then we sort of riffed on, yeah, but like that 0 to 60% is super easy. It's the remaining stuff. And that's why I don't know if anybody's read the recent MIT report where so many AI projects are failing in production, right? And they're not getting a strong return on investment. And I know we've got a few customers on this call, and like we're super focused on making sure our customers get return on investment. So this session is really around trying to highlight to people why it's so easy to dazzle in demos with AI, but why in production it's another game altogether. So the objective of this call at the end of it, and I think we've got 45 minutes. I think we finish at about 1:45 in I think we're all on the same except for India, which is much earlier there. So thanks for getting up so super early. So probably about 40 minutes and we should be wrapped up. Does that sound good to everybody? Thumbs up? All with me? Okay. Cool. All right. So at the end, we should have a good understanding of like what are the potential challenges and pitfalls for AI in production. Like this is the whole idea. It's like, yeah, everything seems easy. So it's always good to learn from people that have done this before and got the scars on their back. So our hope is that we can identify some of those pitfalls, some of those challenges, so you don't fall into them yourselves. To do that, we're just going to do some level setting on what are AI agents and why are they important? What are the use cases behind them? And the majority of the session is going to be with Shlomi, who's going to be taking through like what happens when we go to production. What are those pitfalls? What are those challenges? I want to make sure if you guys have questions, I run these sessions intentionally, and feel free to put more of your cameras on. I love seeing people. I wish we could do this as a workshop with a whiteboard and we're all there face to face, but it just can't happen that way. So, really ask questions, make it interactive. I know Shlomi would appreciate that, and we all would. You're gonna get out of this what you put into it, to be super honest as well. Okay, and then we'll wrap up with Q&A at the end, and then we've got like a sort of like a potential offer at the end if you guys are interested as well. Sound good? Cool. All right. So what is an AI agent? Like, I think, does anybody not know what an AI agent is, or does anybody take a stab without reading my screen? Like, how would you describe, you felt like my mum is 82 years of age, and if I had to explain to my mum like what an AI agent is, that's sort of what, that's the definition that you need to give. Anybody want to take a stab of how you describe an AI agent? Naf, can I throw you in the deep end?
Yeah, it's like a automated agent, um, hanging about the system, taking information that's fed to it and pretty much replicating that.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? You guys are shy. Don't be shy. Seriously. I think like the way that I think about it is sort of like it's almost like a human would, how they interoperate with systems. They can, look at systems, look at data, take actions, make decisions, have goals of what they need to do. Maybe the goal is helping a customer with a question, or maybe it's helping an internal person achieve something. These are like you've sort of got like autonomous or human in the loop, where they can work with humans or they can work independently as well. So it's this like next, I don't know if I watched a TED talk with Eric Schmidt, the ex-CEO of Google, and he was talking about like this is really the next big thing. We see productivity improving 30% year on year. We've never seen it before with the introduction of AI agents if they deliver on that promise. So this is really what it is. An AI agent is a software system that independently senses its environment, makes decisions, and acts to achieve specific goals, which is still a little bit nebulous, but we'll get down a little bit further into that. So what are some of the use cases for AI agents? I think like there's a lot, right? Like you can start at the front end of working with customers. These could be AI agents that are helping customers do their job with your products and services. So Jessica and I think Shweta, I hope you don't mind calling out Shipit. Like you guys get a ton of Wizmo requests. Where is my order? Like, hey, I want to change the address. Where's it at? This stuff. And it goes to a team somewhere. We've got L1, typically we call an L1 team. And they're just like smart people doing a lot of repetitive, dumb things. Hey, Sally. So that's a really good example of customer service. But so it's not just like giving them answers of how to, but you can actually be taking actions for them as well, right? Customer support, this could be like, Jess, I think you run a premium team, not to pick on you just because I know you run a premium team. So giving your premium team superpowers, maybe they've got a team member that helps them do their job and find their information so they're not spending 30% of their time trying to get answers themselves. So, being a co-pilot support, customer support, product management, engineering, back office, there's so many opportunities for AI agents. I've just put some there just to get our synapses firing. What does good look like in agents? This is not an exhaustive list. It's just things that we hear from customers that they expect in an agentic platform. So they want to make it sure it's permission aware. And that would mean like if you had an agent say, hey, can you tell me all the salaries of our top executives in our companies? It probably shouldn't give you an answer to that, right? It should be permission aware. It's not allowed to share that information. It should be connected to your data. It should be easy to debug. Like these things it's very interesting working with agents as opposed to Shlomi's probably been coding for how many years, and it's very deterministic and if then else. Now you're prompting and it's less deterministic. So there's a lot of iteration. Have self-learning capabilities. So as it learns over time, it gets better. So there's so much being able to orchestrate with other agents, be able to hand over to humans for human loop. If it can't do this job, can a human help me do this job? And model agnostic, like we've got another customer, I don't know if I know this company called Immutable. They're like a gaming and crypto company, and they for game developers, they provide an SDK. And so they want their AI agent to use Anthropic as a model underneath that compared to OpenAI because it's very code related, and Anthropic's got a very good model for code. So let me just pause there. That was sort of the setup of what an agent is and what sort of good looks like. Any questions before I hand over to Shlomi to talk about, well, what happens when we go to production? Any questions, thoughts, feedback before I hand over? Good to see you, Sean. Thanks for putting your camera on, mate. Love to see you. All right, Shlomi, over to you, mate.
All right. Thank you everyone again for joining. And we'll get to this picture of a car soon to understand why it's here. But any one of you tried to build an AI agent or at least been involved in a project that will set out to build an AI agent and some demo of it or of sorts? Well, maybe you specifically didn't, but you. Oh, I see Mike.
Oh,
there
Mike.
you go.
There we go, Mike.
All right.
Good job,
So,
Mike.
I mean,
feel free to go off Mike.
Yeah.
All right. How did it go, Mike?
Good. I mean, last night I built one just to do some validation of market. So using Claude Code agents, I built an agent to take a CSV, do some market research, and then update that CSV so that I didn't have to go use an API.
Brilliant, right? So I mean, that's a great example of just how easy it is to make one, right? But tell me, Mike, would you be able to now sell it to people to have others
No,
use it?
no.
No, right? Yeah, and I think that's kind of the core of what we're going to talk about today. Is what is the difference between a demo, between something that's maybe useful for you in your day-to-day jobs, and something that you can productize and give repeatable, consistent value to your customer, and why it doesn't just become that? Why, I mean, Mike probably spent a day, maybe 2 days, I don't know, building this thing, but in order to make it a product, you'll spend a lot more, significant amount. So it is very easy, right? We even have agents that help us build agents. We have um, uh, coding tools like Cursor and others. You literally tell it what you want and it builds it for you, but it only goes so far, right? So let's dissect it a little bit. Let's see, maybe even take Mike's example or just a general demo example. It's usually on some specific data, right? On something that you needed to do, you wanted to show, right? In a demo environment, for example. So in Mike's case, it must have been, the CSV, that structure of that CSV. Um, right? It doesn't have to connect to a lot of things. So it needed to do something in a spreadsheet. That's one thing. It got information from one thing. So you see that the problem space is much more confined, right? But when you go to a real production environment, it's not going to cut it, right? The you don't connect to just one clean source that you know that you can do work on yourself. You actually have to connect to a lot of different sources, be it your Salesforce, your Jira, your Slack, ServiceNow. There's just so many others. And you know what? Even if you manage to connect to them, because hey, I mean, uh, Cursor can build you a connector pretty easily, right? Who promises you that the data there is properly formatted, right? That people actually fill in the right things. You don't have lingering open objects that are that just don't reflect reality properly, or that you don't have duplicates or other things that just damage the quality of the data. And in any kind of data processing tool, there's a known phrase: garbage in, garbage out. There's no way to escape that, right? So, okay, so you've connected your demo, let's say, to not just one spreadsheet, but maybe a few more, maybe documents, maybe other tools that you have, your Salesforce or Jira. But guess what? This connector, it's now its own project. It has its own life. Maybe the APIs have changed. Maybe authentication is now something you need to go and fix, right? So it becomes a project, it becomes a living thing, and every connector is different. You connect to Jira, it's one thing. You connect to Jira on-prem, totally other, right? So it's no longer just this layer of intelligence that you say, hey, take these things and give me that. You have to now start to work on the mechanics, on the systems uh, uh, between your agent and the tools that you needed to connect to. Another topic besides this integration sprawl that you'll easily get to is about context and continuity. Demos usually answer one question or maybe a small set of questions, right? Mike's agent that he built yesterday can take one kind of CSV for the most part, maybe a few, and answer something specific, do something specific. But when you want to productize it, it needs a lot of more things. For example, it needs to retain some memory, right? Memory across different actions, right? If something was answered, let's say in one ticket by the AI, shouldn't the next ticket be privy to that solution? But wait, maybe it was an answer. Maybe it was just a suggestion. And actually, if they waited, they'll notice that the customer said, oh, actually, it didn't work. Should now the agent use that? Right? So it's not very clear all the time. What should you use? When? How do you keep this memory across occurrences correct? How do you keep it between tickets, between teams, as you hand off things between the agent and the human or agent to another agent. If you don't have these things, the agents essentially are doomed to just either repeat themselves and be extremely confident in misleading advice, right? Make it sound so confident that you're just sure it's working. Now, I think that my internet is doing some problems, is acting up. Can you guys hear me?
You started for a second, but you're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. I recently moved to Austin and there's a lot of great things here. Internet is not one of them. So sorry about that. All right. So I don't know if you've heard the last comment I made is that LLMs will generally try to please you, right? They will try to answer. That's their job, right? So if you don't put anything there to make sure that they know how to properly please you or properly say the right thing, they'll just say the wrong thing very confidently. Another topic we can discuss is about, fragility. While the demo is very hand-tuned to succeed, right? You want to impress your manager, your executive. You want to complete a task. That's your task. It's, the specific thing you're doing. Production is very noisy. It's very unpredictable. Your customer can ask for the same thing in 100 different ways, can approach it in different wording or different attitude. Um, uh, so you can't really necessarily always be prepared for how are you gonna accept this information. And hallucinations and silent failures are easy to creep in, right? Because the model is trying to just please and produce the next sentence, the next word, you'll just figure something out based on whatever it has. But just remember, it's artificial intelligence, right? It's not real intelligence. It doesn't know what it says, right? There's in the back end, there's just a bunch of numbers and statistics. Essentially, it just computes the probability of the next word given all the previous words and the context it had, right? So it doesn't know things really. All right, and now we can go and talk a little bit about that image of a car that we had on before. If you think about it, we can all, have hobbies. Someone might have a hobby of building a car. They can get the parts, work it in their garage, and after some time, they can have a great looking car, all shiny and fun. And maybe they even take it out for a spin around the neighborhood, show off to some friends. But imagine these folks going on a highway. What happens then, right? Are you sure it's not a hazard? What happens if the brakes wear out, or if you need, a license to operate it, right? What happens if you want to be an Uber driver? You can drive your self-made car, right? You don't comply with laws and regulation necessarily to do that. So just like you won't always build your car, you might do it as a hobby, and it could be a great hobby. When you want something that works, you're just gonna go and buy a car. You're just gonna rent it or buy it, but you're gonna get one that is professionally made. All right, let's talk about another aspect of agents, how they differ from a demo environment, from a one-off to an actual product. This time it's in the context of trust, security, of governance. So imagine access and permission. Who gets to see what? Richard kind of alluded to it before. How can you tell the LLM that Richard can see, everything in every object, but I can only see some things in some objects, right? How can, if you want to talk about even internal agents versus external agents, meaning agents for your internal folks, let's say, can be a little more okay, maybe, okay, so I saw something I shouldn't have seen, not a big deal. But maybe for, or most likely for an external facing agent for your customer, it really should not see another customer's invoice or history or any kind of information, really. I mean, that's bad, right? It's not just a glitch. That's actually something that you'd lose trust for, right? And you really can't give a model sensitive data and kind of hope that it works, maybe try to prompt your way into it working. You can't do that, right? LLMs are by design non-deterministic, and it's intentional so that they can actually produce human-like thoughts. Otherwise, they're not going to be very effective. But this means that you can also have boundary around how much you can limit them from what you do, right? Everything you say to them, it's a it's a suggestion essentially for the LLM.
Hmm.
Any
I
questions?
think I was gonna say like one thing, Shlomi, as well, like that's sort of a data view, but I think even with if if agents can take actions as well, like having some controls around the actions that they take as well,
Absolutely.
is similarly like I know some of the use cases we've looked at is where you may want an AI agent that's like typically like let's take the support use case when it goes up to L2 L3 and you've got a developer on support, right? And those developer on support may run scripts, they may call APIs, they may do things to reset systems or whatever. So having guardrails and controls around when they do that and just making sure that's safe as well is a similar sort of example, I think.
It very good point. Actions are just the same. If you want your agent to be able to update an address, should I be able to update Richard's address? Right? It should know the boundaries. Now, you just said now guardrails, right? Sure, people try this. They put guardrails inside of prompts, but these alone aren't reliable. In fact, you need some kind of post-processing validations to be in place to make sure that things are happening. Even more, you need pre-processing pipelines to make sure that the LLM doesn't even get the data that it shouldn't, that the user shouldn't see, right? You can't give it the data and just tell it, well, don't use it or don't show it. It shouldn't even have it to begin with.
Mm.
And you also gotta have a way to look under the hood and see why did the agent make that choice, why did he make that action, what did he answer in this or that way. um, so you really need an ability to observe what is going on in this agent's digital mind, right? And in order to do what I just described, is post-processing, pre-processing, you actually need a way of mixing together deterministic logic with non-deterministic, or let's call it sensible logic, right? So for example, should should I allow Richard to change my address? No, the LLM shouldn't even get there. That's an if-else statement. That's deterministic logic. All right. Should I allow Richard to change his address? Yes, I should. Now I go into an area where I can use some non-determinism and say, "Hey, Richard, what's your new address?" and be able to understand it semantically from Richard's word. It can be in whatever format it can be in, right? Um, but let the LLM figure this out and then call back into a deterministic flow again. So you gotta have a way of mixing determinism and sensible behavior together in one platform so you can control the what the agent can and cannot do from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like super important. Like where like a good example of deterministic is maybe assessing the sentiment of the customer, for example. Are they frustrated? How do you define if they're frustrated? You can't like if they use this word, this word, this word, if they swear or whatever it is, like that's like trying to build a rule as if somebody's frustrated. So it's like a judgment, right? You can give it some examples, but ultimately you're judging like is somebody's hair on fire, right? So I think they're in the ability to where you want to really control the outcome versus allow the agent to make judgment is sort of in my mind. And mixing those two are really important because there might be sometimes where you want that if then else. It has to be. You need to be 100% sure versus I'm okay to judge. Like a good example of judgment is, hey, when a case comes in, what part of the product has this got to do with? What's their sentiment? What priority is this? What's the happiness level of the customer? All these
Is it
things
a
are sort of,
feature or a bug,
is
right?
it a feature or a bug, right? They're sort of like, determinist. Yeah, what do you say?
Non-deterministic, sensible.
Non-deterministic,
Those would be
probabilistic.
sensible.
Yeah,
Correct. Those
exactly.
are examples of sensible. So, for example, semantically, the model can say, this looks like a P1 issue. It's a bug. I should call the engineers up, right? But it should not, the model should not think, is this engineer on call now or not? This should be deterministic. You should have a table showing who is on call and let the LLM only get the engineer that is on call, so he doesn't even have to take this decision.
Let me just stop and ask some questions of like people listening to this. Thoughts, feedback, queries. Does this idea of being able to interleave deterministic and non-deterministic, like in like agentic workflows or skills, whatever does it make sense? Do you have your own examples or use cases?
100%. Yeah. So we have used LLMs to match sets of data, for example, and an LLM is highly useful for classifying column headers and understanding the language and interpreting the data within. But to use a thinking machine burning tokens on a deterministic workflow is acceptable now, but it won't be when LLMs raise their rates. And we need to use thinking tools for thinking problems and algorithms for non-thinking deterministic problems. And so, yeah, finding the right way to chain those together is a discovery that we had on some early AI projects, maybe 8 weeks ago, where that was one of our key lessons learned.
Cool.
Very nice, very nice.
Anybody
Yeah,
else?
think about it. It's kind of like how at some point programmers decided to put in regular expression, and all of a sudden they could, use this tool in the middle. Now we might be able to have a little, AI node inside of your logic, where we could ask, not does it match this expression, but does it talk about something more semantic? So I think that's a very important learning. Now that's very good, but when you have deterministic and non-deterministic, now you have this one flow that can go everywhere. You gotta have some good observability. You gotta be able to troubleshoot to say, wait, why did this take? Why did the system decide to take this path? What were the deterministic pieces? By the way, the fact it's deterministic doesn't mean it's correct, right? We've all know that the software has bugs. That's a deterministic bug. So how do you have this observability crossover between your deterministic logic and your non-deterministic logic? What was the reasoning for that the LLM gave for producing this answer, and how did that fit in with the rest of deterministic logic? So observability is an extremely important tool, and it's very difficult to do. And if you can't troubleshoot, you cannot improve, you cannot reason, you cannot audit, right? And in any enterprise setting, this is not something you can just not have, right? You have to have those things.
How do you do a performance review on an agent? How do you give them a report card? Have they been effective?
Has it been
Like how do
effective?
we call it eval. How do you eval an agent, right? These are things that as you move up the tree in maturity that you'll have to potentially think about.
Right. Yeah, and in this section, last but really not least, it's your reputation, your reliability. A single embarrassing mistake can erode your trust for months, sometimes even in the good case. And AI hallucinations could result in lawsuits, lost deals, brand damage. So governance really is not an optional thing, and governance is not also an easy thing to deliver, right? It's actually the price of enterprise adoption. So if you want to move up to a product, you're going to have to figure this out first. And I can tell you a funny story that we actually had internally when some time ago we were pretty early on into this journey, and we were going to demo to a large airline company. And during our prep, the SE put an instruction in the prompt and said like, hey, start off with a joke, like have a little bit of humor. He wanted kind of to impress. And so in this run, one of us asked, well, can I carry a missile on board? And the agent very nicely asked, well, it depends what size, you know. Now, this is funny, but it could have cost us a lot. I mean, this is not something that could go live anywhere, right? So, and this is a legitimate mistake. Someone just put it in the prompt, but you still got to have these validations to say, these things are not funny. These are not, this is not the place for it. Be it language, or be it attitude, or just jokes. Any questions?
I think like maybe the one thing I've learned, and I'd love your feedback, is that the way that you take these things in production is sort of interesting. A lot of our customers, like we've got a customer in New Zealand, and the way they're taking in production is before they deploy the agent in product, is that they get a lot of cases through email and other channel phone, and they've got some dedicated Slack channels with customers as well. And so they've deployed agents on those channels. And what they're doing is it's going to a human in the loop. It's saying, hey, I'm suggesting this is the response. And 77% of the time now, they're just picking that up and saying, yes, it's good to go, respond. And at some point, they'll say, yep, I feel comfortable. And then they'll just hand that over to the agent. So they're starting with a human in the loop and then moving. So that's sort of like a typical crawl, walk, run that we see as well. So, but yeah, with like, in that case, I remember that customer was like, they had to prompt their way out of like, customers are asking, what's the difference between your product and another product? Well, they don't want the agent to give that competitive, unless they can, but they want to make sure they're really controlling that as well. So, and having no political conversations and things like that. So,
right.
Thoughts, feedback. What are you guys thinking? I'd love if there was any like burning questions. Hey, we're thinking of doing this. This is what we're seeing. These are the problems that we're seeing in our organization. This is like, have you heard of this before? Like, feel free. I know Shlomi's involved in many of our customers' implementations at scale. So I wouldn't be shy if there was things that you were like really struggling with internally and wanted to ask some questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, no takers.
Sean, Mike, Jessica. No.
All right. Okay,
All
so let's
clear.
talk about the burning question. If you guys have questions, please
Yeah,
ask.
just join.
But let's proceed. How about some ROI, right? Okay, I mean, getting a solution might cost a lot, and our intern Bob just built something in like a weekend. Can we just do that? He did it in one day. What would happen in 2 weeks, right? And this is where it's very useful to realize that executives that really don't want demos, right? They want outcomes. They want to see faster service, reduced costs. They want to see happier customers. And this is kind of where the build versus buy really is at, right? And in order to understand that, we have to first of all step a little bit back and talk about a very common term in the software architecture world, right? Functional requirements or functional elements and non-functional elements, right? So when an architect, a software architect, talks about a functional requirement, it is the thing that is your business specific, all right? Something that that will set you apart from your competition or maybe from other industries, right? So for instance, for an e-commerce business, a cart is a functional requirement because otherwise how would people buy? And the cart have to work well and be maybe very advanced, right? So maybe you want an intelligent cart that proposes other things. That is your functional requirement. What is a non-functional requirement? Those are the things that everyone has to have. You can't do anything without it. So your scale, right? Your cart has to serve millions of people at the same time. That's not a functional requirement. It doesn't set you apart from anyone else, but you have to have it, right? Resilience, observability, security, backups, all those things that everyone gotta do, especially in the world of SaaS, right? If you don't have backups, you don't know what's going to happen if something breaks one day. So AWS, for instance, if you remember the good old days before AWS, if you wanted to start a startup, The first thing you had to do is get a bunch of servers, some storage, and a gateway or a router for some network, right? That was a big hill you had to climb before you could even write your first line of code. What did AWS bring into our world? Right? The ability to not worry about any of those things. You go and you click a button and you get infinite amount of storage, completely resilient. It's called S3, right? You need a bunch of VMs, you start with one EC2 instance, and with a click of a button, you make it 1,000, right? You need network? No problem. Go sign up for a VPC. So AWS essentially got into the business of providing non for companies so they can focus on whatever sets them apart. All right? Think of Shopify. That's another example. If you want to sell something out of your home, you're making great, I don't know, cakes or plates, and you want to sell them, you can go and build your own e-commerce thingy, right? Website and database and everything, and hope to God that you don't have some payment bug and someone's going to be able to order with a fake credit card or something. But instead, you go to Shopify, you click a few things, and you got it, right? They have provided all the non-functional requirements. You can just now drag and drop or code a little bit, but what you focus on is what will generate revenue, generate customers for you. Okay? And AI is no different. Think about all the things we just discussed, right? All of these things are essentially non-functional requirements. Being resilient to prompt injection, knowing your rights, right? There's so many things. Being scalable, having different connectors, having maintenance and upgrade in case of one of these connectors become out of date with the APIs of whatever vendor. Maybe even talent dependency. You had Bob, the intern who built it, but now Bob is left to a different company. No, and you don't have anyone else to go and fill this up. So all of this stuff, all these non-functional requirements, all these things that do not set you apart from the rest, do you really need to invest in it? Okay? And we can talk about some examples. For example, maybe you're familiar with Navan. It's a corporate travel management platform. And these guys actually spent 2 years, half of their entire engineering team, just to build a deflection agent. Now, for them, it made sense because when they started more than 2 years ago, they had no platform. And this is what set them apart from anyone else, right? I don't know if they'd start today if they would still have gone down that way. And if you read the MIT report that Richard discussed in the beginning, it actually says that 95% of Gen AI pilots fail. Only 5% reach production with measurable ROI. It says external partnerships succeed 2x more, twice more than internal builds. 66% versus 33. Employee adoptions nearly doubles with externally built tools. And actually, their conclusion is that buying provides faster time to value, lower cost, and better fit. So you can see that in most situations, if it's actually not worth it to build, just like it might not be worth it to build a server farm, right? Maybe if you're Walmart or something and you have just so much, it's actually gonna be cost effective for you to do so. But mostly not so much. All right. So if you think about it, just ask, is this thing that I'm about to set, this journey that I'm about to set on, is this a core to our business differentiation? Will this set us apart? Okay. So I think the probably the rule of thumb here is build selectively for differentiation, buy for everything else. So your energy goes where it matters. Right?
Cool. Thanks, Shlomi. All right, Lisa, I know we're at time. I'll one last, if you want to open up for questions. Any burning questions on anybody's mind? I'll just go around the room. Mike, Sean, Marisha. All good? Okay, well, listen, I want to thank you. I'll just quickly just share with you, like, I guess what we hopefully we went through, and we'll share in a transcript as well, because I think there was a lot of content there that would be useful to sort of bunch up. We might give you a summary of some of the things that Shlomi went through. So we went through what and why agents, what happens when we go into production, and Shlomi really sort of highlighted how, like, to get something, you know, semi-useful, but really taken to production with, you know, that's resilient and observability and being able to evaluate it, etc., is a lot more. That's sort of that last mile. So I did want to, you know, leave you with a thought that if you're interested in learning more and learning more about your own agentic use cases, we've sort of like for this audience, feel free to scan this QR code, and we're running AI workshops at our cost and digging into your use cases and to see, hopefully, to surface some of those pitfalls for you, specific to your use cases, so that you're sort of not going to fall into those traps for young players. So, with that, I want to thank you all for your time, and have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. See you. Bye bye. Thanks, Shlomi. Love your work, mate. Take care. Bye, everybody.